Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the heart of ancient Greece, where gods and mortals often found themselves at odds, and where a single boast could change the course of a life or even create an entirely new species. Picture this, a humble cottage nestled in the rolling hills of Lydia, the rhythmic clatter of a loom echoing through the air, and a young woman whose weaving skills are so extraordinary that they catch the attention of the gods themselves. You probably won't survive this tale without questioning the wisdom of challenging deities, but that's part of the fun, right? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the vibrant land of Lydia, where the air is thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers and the distant hum of cicadas. The sun casts a golden hue over the landscape, illuminating the bustling village where artisans ply their trades and stories are woven into the very fabric of daily life. In a modest home at the edge of the village lives Arachne, a young woman whose fingers move with a grace and precision that seem almost otherworldly. Her loom is her sanctuary, and the tapestries she creates are nothing short of masterpieces. Scenes of nature, mythology, and daily life come alive under her touch, each thread meticulously placed to form intricate patterns that captivate all who behold them. Word of Arachne's unparalleled skill spreads far and wide, drawing admirers from neighbouring towns, and even the attention of the gods. Yet with acclaim comes pride, and Arachne begins to believe that her talent surpasses that of any mortal or immortal. She boasts that her weaving is superior even to that of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and crafts. Athena, ever watchful, and not one to let such claims go unchallenged, decides to pay Arachne a visit. Disguised as an old woman, she approaches the young weaver and offers a gentle warning. Humility is a virtue, and challenging the gods is a dangerous game. But Arachne, confident in her abilities and unshaken by the stranger's words, dismisses the advice and insists that if Athena disagrees, she should come and prove her superiority. At that moment, the old woman's form shimmers and transforms into the radiant goddess herself. The villagers gasp and bow in reverence, but Arachne stands her ground, her eyes locked with Athena's. The challenge is accepted and a contest is set. Each will create a tapestry, and the one whose work is deemed superior will be declared the master weaver. The day of the contest arrives, and the village gathers to witness the divine showdown. 2 looms are set side by side, and the air is thick with anticipation. Athena begins her work, weaving a tapestry that depicts the glory and majesty of the gods, their benevolence towards humanity, and the harmony of the cosmos. Her threads shimmer with celestial light, and the scenes she creates are awe-inspiring. Arachne, undeterred, chooses a different approach. Her tapestry portrays the gods in their less flattering moments, tales of deception, jealousy, and mischief. She illustrates stories of Zeus's many affairs, the vanity of the goddesses, and the pettiness that sometimes governs Olympus. Her work is bold, honest, and executed with flawless technique. As the final threads are woven and the tapestries unveiled, the crowd is left in stunned silence. Athena's work is magnificent, but Arachne's is a masterpiece of truth and artistry. The goddess, though, recognizing the skill in Arachne's work, is enraged by the audacity and the subject matter. In a fit of fury, she tears Arachne's tapestry to shreds and strikes the young woman down. Overwhelmed by shame and despair, Arachne flees and attempts to take her own life. But Athena, witnessing the depth of her remorse, decides to show mercy. She transforms Arachne into a spider, granting her the ability to weave intricate webs for eternity. Thus the first spider is born, and the art of weaving continues in a new form. This tale, rich with themes of pride, humility and transformation, serves as a timeless reminder of the delicate balance between confidence and hubris. As you drift into sleep, let the image of Arachne's delicate webs guide you into dreams woven with threads of ancient myths and lessons that still resonate today. By the time the sun fully spills over the hills, painting the sky with that particular burnt orange hue only found in ancient stories, and overripe peaches, the village has gone very still. Not silent, just taut. Like a thread pulled tight between two posts, just waiting to snap. You wake slower than usual today, not because you're tired, but because the air outside already feels too loud. The whispering hasn't stopped. If anything, it's gotten sharper, like the village has become one large loom of murmurs, every strand a new version of the same question. What will the goddess do you throw on your sandals? Your tunic is wrinkled. You haven't even chewed your barley yet? Doesn't matter. You step outside. The sky is cloudless. Of course it is. You'd almost expect a little divine thunder for drama's sake, but apparently Athena doesn't need sound effects. You make your way past houses with paint faded by sun and salt air, where even the chickens have paused their usual chaos. One of them, usually dedicated to chasing fig skins down the street, is sitting dead still beneath a cart, as if even poultry have the sense to be cautious today. At the edge of the square, a crowd is forming. You've seen plenty of gatherings before, harvest feasts, impromptu debates about who truly invented olive bread, even a mock trial for someone's goat. But this is different. No one's laughing, no one's bartering. It's quiet enough to hear a weaving shuttle click into place from 50 paces. And there she is, Arachne, sitting at her loom like it's any other morning. Her fingers move with that same steady rhythm forward, pull guide release, but you can feel the difference in the air around her. She's not weaving a blanket or a curtain. She's weaving something sharp, something that hums. Her eyes flick up once meeting yours just for a second, then drop back to her thread like they've got better things to do. She's not nervous. She's ready. Someone clears their throat near the edge of the crowd. A cough, then silence again. The baker's boy leans toward your shoulder and whispers, "Is she really going to challenge Athena?" You nod slowly, though you're not sure why. Because the truth is she already has. It's not a formal challenge, not in the way gods are used to. No golden apples or summoned storms, just thread, just hands, just skill. And that might be worse. You inch closer. The loom creaks. And then, without fanfare, without any warning, a figure steps through the square. She's wearing plain linen, no golden helmet, no spear, just a woman. Or so she seems. But you know, everyone does. Because no one walks like that unless the world was stitched to make room for their feet. Athena, the goddess of wisdom war strategy, and as the stories always add, like a ceremonial footnote crafts, weaving. She stops just a few steps away from the loom, her face unreadable. Arachne doesn't stop weaving. She doesn't bow. She doesn't flinch. You feel your own shoulders tensing on her behalf, but she stays exactly as she is, as if her hands are too busy to entertain the presence of a deity. Athena watches for a moment. Then she speaks. "You're bold." Arachne shrugs. "I'm accurate. You would gasp if you had any breath left." Athena glances at the tapestry already growing on Arachne's loom. From where you stand, you can just make out the beginning of a scene, something about gods transforming into animals, maybe. The lines are too precise to be accidental. Athena says, "If you're so certain, let's make it official." The loom beside Arachne, unused until now, slides forward. How did no one notice it? A second loom. Identical. As if someone had always planned for this. They don't announce the rules. They don't need to. It's simple, one tapestry each. No time limit, but they'll both finish before the sun rises again. No divine assistance, only thread, only skill, only story. Athena begins first. She threads golden strands so bright your eyes ache just watching. The scene starts with Olympus. Not imagined Olympus, but real, or at least what a goddess insists is real. Marble so white it glows, gods gleaming like carved fire, mortals kneeling in rows like they're grateful to exist. Her hands move quickly, elegantly, precisely. You've never seen weaving like this. Until now. Because then Arachne begins. Her threads are softer, darker. No gold, no sparkle, just detail. Where Athena wove grandeur, Arachne weaves truth. Zeus as a bull chasing Europa across the shore. Apollo demanding songs punishing those who sing too well. Poseidon claiming cities he cannot rule. You want to look away, but you can't. Because her hands tell the parts of the myths people whisper at night but never say near altars. Athena's fingers pause once. Just once. A flicker. Then continue. The day becomes a blur. Villagers bring food but forget to eat. The priest forgets to light the incense for evening prayers. Someone tries to sing to break the tension, but the melody dies after 2 notes. You watch thread become fury, thread become memory, thread become rebellion. Athena finishes first. Her tapestry sparkles. It's Olympus as it wishes to be remembered. Arachne finishes second. Her tapestry breathes. It's Olympus as it truly is. You watch the goddess rise and walk forward. She studies Arachne's work, line by line, scene by scene, face by face. She says nothing. For so long you think maybe she's left her voice on the loom. Then finally she whispers, "You win." The words don't sound like defeat. They sound like a door closing. And then faster than anyone can react, she tears Arachne's tapestry down the centre. Not violently, not angrily, just precisely. She turns to Arachne. You expect thunder. You expect wrath. Instead, she places her hand on Arachne's head and says softly, "You'll keep weaving." Arachne opens her mouth to reply, but she doesn't speak. She gasps, shrinks, her arms thin, her legs multiply, her skin darkens and hardens, her body twists inward. The crowd stumbles back. Athena steps away. Arachne is gone. In her place a small creature, 8-legged, terrified, trembling. Then it climbs, up the shattered loom, across the torn threads, and spins. The web catches light, delicate, perfect, sad. You swallow hard. Athena watches for a moment. Then without a word she vanishes. That night the village is silent. You walk home under a sky too big and too still. Above you spiders begin to weave. One above your door, another near the well. No one dares brush them away. You dream of looms and lightning and threads that remember. And somewhere you're certain Arachne still weaves. She always will. The morning after the goddess left the village feels like it's walking on threads. Not roads, not paths. Threads. Every footstep too loud, every breath too sharp. As if the whole town has become one big tapestry, and someone's worried the wrong move might unravel it all. You wake slowly, not from noise, but from stillness. The kind that presses into your skin and makes your heart beat just a little faster, like it knows something's changed even before your eyes open. You step outside. The sun is rising slow, reluctant, like even the sky isn't sure it wants to be here today. Shadows stretch across the stone walls like tired arms. The air is warm and dry and full of the faint smell of soot, as if someone somewhere has burned a piece of thread in mourning. At the edge of the village square the loom is still there. The second one, empty now, abandoned. Its frame leans ever so slightly like it's lost its purpose, and hanging in the corner, glistening faintly in the golden light, a web, delicate, geometric, precise. You stare at it for a long time. It's small, nothing fancy. But somehow it feels heavier than any tapestry you've ever seen. Because you know who made it, even if her hands are different now, even if her name is only whispered. Arachne. The village isn't sure what to do next. They don't speak her name aloud, not because it's cursed, because it's complicated, because part of them is proud, and part of them is afraid, because what do you do with someone who challenged a god and almost won? What do you do when the punishment looks more like transformation? What do you do when the story's ending isn't an ending at all? You walk toward the olive press near the edge of town. It's quiet. Birds flit between branches. A lizard scurries across your foot and disappears into the stone, and above you, tucked into the shadows between the beams, another web, bigger, symmetrical, perfect. You go looking for more. It's not exactly a hunt, more like curiosity pulling you by the collar. At the bathhouse, you spot one in the upper arch. At the baker's stall, one clings between the awning ropes. Near the temple columns, a thin thread stretches from capital to cornice, barely visible unless the light catches it just right. Everywhere you go, someone says they've seen one. No one wants to sweep them away. Even the priest avoids them. They're harmless, he says too quickly. But it's not fear. It's reverence. Or maybe guilt. The girl who used to dye Arachne's wool sits on the bench outside her house now. She doesn't talk much, just sorts threads that no longer have a weaver. She ties them into neat bundles: red, blue, saffron, plum. You sit beside her and ask gently, did she know she doesn't look up? She always knew, she says. Knew what, that it wouldn't end well. You wait. She said you can't touch stories that big without changing shape. You nod even though you don't fully understand. The girl hands you a small spool of thread. It was her favourite. You take it. You don't ask what you're supposed to do with it. You just hold it like it's something sacred. That night you dream again. But this time it's not Athena, not Olympus, not gods or thunder or broken looms. This time you dream of webs. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They stretch across doorways, fill alleyways, hang like curtains across the entrance to temples. But they're not sticky, not traps. They're messages, patterns, stories, some in straight lines, some spirals, some not so intricate they hum when you try to follow them. You reach out to touch one and wake up with the sound of spinning still in your ears. The next day, someone swears they saw a spider the size of a grape spinning near the market. It wasn't ordinary, they say. It moved like it was painting. You go. You don't find it. But you find the web, and you stare at it, and you start to notice something strange. In the middle of the web, woven tighter than the rest, are 8 threads that cross in such a way that they almost look like letters, numbers, symbols. You can't quite read them, but they feel like language. Like a whisper caught mid-sentence. Over the following week, the webs keep appearing. Some vanish overnight, some stay. Some stretch across corners you swore were bare the day before. One girl finds a web spun across her loom. She doesn't remove it. Instead, she weaves around it, adds thread to it, says it helped her make her best pattern yet. The old weaver down the hill nods when she hears this, says wisdom changes shape, but it doesn't go away. No one argues. You try to weave yourself, just once. You borrow a small loom tuck into the shade and thread your needle. You're not good. You make mistakes. The thread tangles. But something keeps you going. The rhythm, the quiet, the hum. You think about Arachne, not the spider, not the girl, the weaver. You wonder if she'd be annoyed that her name is now more insect than artist. You hope not. Because you think she'd like this. The way her story keeps threading itself into corners, quietly, patiently, without apology. You brush a gnat off your arm and realise it got stuck in a thread. You flick it away, carefully, because you don't want to disturb the web that's slowly building near your window frame. It's been 2 weeks since Arachne vanished, and the village still hasn't figured out what story it's supposed to tell about her. You'd think it would have settled by now. Myths don't usually take this long to bake. They rise fast like bread on the hearth, fed by fear, wonder, and the comfort of certainty. But Arachne's story, it lingers, not like smoke, like thread stuck in the sole of your sandal. You carry it with you whether you want to or not. The older villagers call her that girl in the tone people use for things they don't fully approve of but can't deny. The children whisper her name like it's part of a riddle. Even the temple priest, normally so quick to give everything a neat little ending, avoids eye contact when someone brings her up. And you find yourself walking past her old workshop almost every day now. Not because you expect her to be there, but because, well, something is. The loom remains, covered in dust now but untouched. No one dares use it, not even the bravest of the apprentices. One girl placed her shuttle on the bench once just to test the wood. A web appeared overnight, perfect, centered, and no one's touched the bench since. The strangest thing is how the spiders don't behave like spiders anymore. You've watched them. One spins above your door. It builds slowly, section by section, always pausing before the final thread. Like it's considering something. You sit in the doorway, chewing on a piece of dried fig and just watch. The spider seems to notice you. It doesn't run. It adjusts a single strand and then retreats to the shadows. It feels less like instinct and more like choice. And soon, they're everywhere. Not an infestation, an audience, watching, spinning, leaving patterns where once there were only corners. At first the village tries to ignore them, but when the cobbler finds a spiral web inside a shoe that had been hanging untouched for months, and the customer who wears that shoe says he's dreamed 3 nights in a row of a woman with too many hands weaving the stars, people begin to pay attention. A priest suggests it's a test. Someone else says it's a curse. Your neighbour insists it's a blessing because her wheat's been growing straighter since the web showed up in her window. No one agrees, but no one sweeps the webs away either, and that says enough. You spend more time weaving now. You're not good. Your threads knot when they should flow. Your fingers cramp. You miscount the rows and have to undo hours of work. But still you sit at your tiny loom borrowed from the old woman with the loud sandals and the quiet hands, and you try. You don't make images, you make rhythms. Lines that repeat. Shapes that feel steady. Safe. Until one evening you stop mid-row and realise that something has changed. Your hand isn't guiding the shuttle, it's following. Like the thread already knows where it wants to go. You drop the yarn, blink, shake your head, then keep weaving. Because what else can you do? One morning you wake with a strange ache in your palms. You open and close your fingers, stretch your wrists. It's not pain, not really, just pressure, like you've been gripping something tightly in your dreams. When you roll over, you see it, a web in the rafters, new, fresh, and at its centre a thread of deep blue unlike anything you've seen before. You climb up to look closer. The thread's tied, a knot at the end, a slip knot. No spider in sight, just the thread, waiting. You leave it there. You don't know what it means, but you're not ready to pull it. Not yet. At the market, a boy sells webs now. Not real ones. Drawings. Sketches on papyrus of different web shapes, each with a name. The spiral of secrets. The queen's net. The forgotten thread. He claims they predict your dreams. People laugh, but they buy them anyway. You get one called The Loom That Listens. That night you dream of a voice humming as it weaves. You can't remember the melody when you wake, but you hum it anyway. The girl who used to dye Arachne's thread is back at her bench. She doesn't speak much anymore, just works. But one day she hands you a bundle of dyed wool. It's what she used, she says. You take it. The colours are richer than you expected, plum pomegranate and the pale grey of stone just before a storm. You weave it that evening, and it sings under your hands. Not loudly, not with words, but it sings. As days pass, people begin leaving offerings at Webb's. Nothing big, a petal, a grain of salt, a coin, a folded scrap of thread. Not because they expect answers, but because it feels right. You add a fig seed to the one near your door. The next day the web is gone, replaced with a new one, larger, more complex. You don't know what it means, but you feel seen. A girl claims she saw Arachne in the woods, that she was walking on two legs, carrying a basket of nettles and whistling. No one believes her, but they all ask which path she took. You walk it yourself the next day. You don't see anyone, but you find a thread caught on a thorn. You take it, tie it to your wrist. It stays there, a reminder that not every transformation is a loss, that some are just different ways of making. At night you light a candle by your loom. You don't weave every evening. Some nights you just sit, wait. Let the silence hum. Let your fingers twitch. And when the thread begins to pull, you follow. Because there's more to tell, and more to spin. And because somewhere out there in the corners where stories nest and webs collect dust until someone sees the meaning in them, she is still weaving. And now maybe so are you. You wake before the sun not because you have to, but because something nudges you from sleep. Not a sound, not a nightmare, just the quiet certainty that something has changed. The air in the room is different, still but not empty, as if it's holding its breath. You sit up slowly, the blanket falling to your lap in soft folds. You don't light a candle, you don't need to. The dim grey light of early morning seeps through the window slats, turning everything the colour of old parchment. You walk barefoot to the door, careful not to step on the small clay bowl you left near the threshold. You left it empty like an invitation, a test. You open the door and immediately see it. A new web. This one isn't just strung across the beam or tucked into a corner. It stretches wide low across your doorway, and in its centre hangs a small circle of dyed thread, plumb the same colour you offered 3 nights ago. But this time it's been spun into a perfect spiral. Not just left there. Made. You stare at it for a long moment. Then you kneel. You don't touch it. You don't dare. Instead, you lay down a new thread in return. Saffron dyed. Frayed at the end. Your favourite. Then you sit on the ground and wait. The village feels slower today. Not tired, just soft around the edges, as if everything is moving at half speed. You pass 2 children playing with sticks near the olive press. They're not pretending to be warriors or heroes like usual. They're pretending to be spiders. One spins thread between fence posts. The other scolds him too loose. You'll never catch a message that way. You keep walking. The well is quiet. The bakery hasn't opened yet. You spot a new web beneath the temple eaves high up, glinting in the sunlight. At its centre is a single poppy petal, curled and dried but still red as fire. Someone left that. Someone besides you. You smile. Because now you know for sure you're not the only one weaving. At your loom, the threads feel different today. Not heavier, not lighter, more like they're awake. The way your fingers find the rhythm is effortless, like they're following footsteps already pressed into the dust. You weave slowly, methodically. You don't have an image in mind, no story to tell, just pattern, repetition, balance. The shape that emerges looks familiar. It takes you half the morning to realise it mirrors the web outside your door. You laugh quietly to yourself, not because it's funny, because it's perfect, and because you didn't mean to. Or maybe you did and just didn't know. By midday the priest stops by. He doesn't enter, just lingers at the edge of your garden leaning on his staff like he's been thinking too long and resting too little. "I've been having dreams," he says. You raise an eyebrow. He stares into the olive tree over your shoulder. "There's a woman," he says. But her face is never the same. Sometimes it's young. Sometimes it's older than stone. Sometimes it's not human. You don't speak. He doesn't need you to. He nods once and leaves. You think about his dreams all afternoon, and you wonder how many others are dreaming too. The dyer brings you a gift that evening. A small pouch of thread, coarse, uneven, dyed with indigo and soot. It smells like ash and river water. You love it immediately. "Try this," she says, but only in moonlight. You don't ask why. You just wait. That night after dinner you light a single candle and weave beneath the open window. The night air is cool against your neck and the thread pulls like smoke, slipping through your fingers as though it already knows where it's going. What you make is strange, uneven, sharp, like thorns or claws. You set it aside when you finish. You don't understand it yet, but you will. The girl who used to sweep the temple floor visits the next morning. She's holding a scrap of silk so thin you can see light through it. Its folded tightly corners crisp like something precious. She unwraps it slowly and lays it flat on your work table. You freeze, because it's your spiral, woven perfectly, smaller than your palm, too fine for human fingers. "I found it on my pillow," she says, eyes wide. You look up at her. She smiles nervously. "I thought maybe you'd know what it means." You don't. But you lie. You say, "It means someone's listening." More offerings appear around the village. Some are tiny threads, feathers, curls of bark. Some are elaborate. One child weaves a web out of grass and leaves it in the centre of the square. Another carves the spiral into a tablet of soft clay. A merchant swears she saw a spider the size of her thumb spin a symbol into the sand at her doorway. No one laughs. No one sweeps the webs away anymore. Even the animals seem to know better. You see a goat sidestep a thread hung between two fence posts with careful grace. You see a cat watch a web shimmer tail twitching, but it doesn't pounce. One evening, as the sun sinks behind the hills and the world turns gold and lavender, you take a walk. No plan, no destination. Your feet lead you through the olive trees past the crumbling edge of the village into the soft hush of wildflowers and dusk. And there in a clearing you don't remember existing, you see it. A loom, old, cracked, left in the grass like a monument. It's not yours. It's not Arachne's, but it knows you. Threaded on it, half-woven, is a piece of cloth more intricate than anything you've ever seen. It's not made of wool, not flax. It's made of silk, and shadow, and memory. You don't touch it. You kneel. You bow your head. And when you rise again, you leave a single thread of your own. Saffron frayed your favourite. You tie it to the sidebar and walk home without looking back. That night you sleep without dreams. But when you wake, there's a new web on your wall. It's shaped like a spiral inside a star inside a circle. At its centre, a perfect knot, and in the knot your thread. Woven in, finally part of something bigger. You're up early again, although truthfully, the difference between night and morning is more of a soft transition than a bright declaration. The sky's just beginning to pull on its colour. In the cool light, the village is quiet but not silent. Somewhere a goat announces itself unnecessarily, and somewhere else the town well creaks as someone hauls up the day's first bucket. You're not thinking about goats or buckets. You're thinking about a visitor. A woman who arrived yesterday with dust on her hems and an odd sort of stillness to her, like a statue had briefly remembered how to walk. She asked to see Arachne. Just that. No explanation. No name. Just a kind but firm request. Of course she was welcomed. She looked like she'd had a hard road, and also like she wasn't accustomed to roads at all. There was something in the way she held herself, like she didn't quite trust the ground beneath her, like she was used to marble floors or clouds. The villagers didn't question her. They liked her smile even if it was a little too symmetrical. They liked the way she listened. They liked her eyes, though no one could agree if they were grey or green, or that uncanny clear blue that only happens in paintings and certain storms. She spoke little but observed much. And when she finally stood before Arachne's loom, where the young woman was half finished with another tapestry of gods, behaving badly, the visitor simply nodded. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she pulled up a stool and asked if she could try weaving. Arachne blinked. Not many people asked that, especially not grown women with perfect posture and sandals that hadn't actually touched the dirt. But she agreed, curious, and so the visitor picked up a shuttle and started weaving as if she'd been born doing it. She didn't boast, she didn't explain, she just let the warp and weft do the talking. You're watching this unfold now the morning after, when Arachne has invited the stranger back for more. Around them a quiet group has gathered, pretending to be casual, like they're not watching the two finest weavers they've ever seen go thread for thread. The visitor hums as she works. Her pattern is geometric, elegant, impossibly precise. She weaves olive branches and horses and a balanced scale that turns into a crescent moon. Arachne is trying not to be impressed. She's failing. Her own hands are faster than ever. Her tapestry shows a banquet where mortals are turned into animals, men with pig snouts, women with wings. The details are exquisite, even a little cruel. But so beautifully cruel. The visitor tilts her head. "Is that Zeus?" she asks softly. Arachne nods. "And that's Hera. That's Hermes spilling wine. That's..." "I know who it is," the woman says not unkindly. She squints at a figure in the corner, and this one, Arachne hesitates. That's supposed to be Athena. The visitor's hand pauses, just for a moment. The shuttle stills, then just as gently she returns to weaving. You don't need to know who she is, but let's be honest, you already suspect. The gods have a reputation for drama, thunderbolts, metamorphoses, petty vengeance, but they also have a habit of walking among mortals when the mood strikes, especially when their pride's been poked. Athena, goddess of wisdom, crafts and cool judgment, rarely throws tantrums, but she does not under any circumstance enjoy being told someone's better than her, especially at her own domain, and Arachne. She dared to say exactly that. Now Athena doesn't yell, she doesn't declare, she visits, she sits, she watches, and when she's ready she proves a point. You watch them silently. The loom clacks, thread pulls tight. The two women weave in a rhythm that feels almost like music. Around you, no one speaks. The goats are even quiet, which is eerie. Athena, and yes, you're now calling her that too, even if she hasn't said it aloud, leans forward and ties off her thread. She stands. Her tapestry is complete. It glows. It's not magic. It's just beyond. The details shimmer not because of divine light, but because every thread lies exactly where it should. The composition tells a story. No, it is a story. 12 gods seated in divine harmony. Mortals kneeling. City shining under heavenly order. It's awe-inspiring. It's perfect. And maybe, just maybe, it's a little boring. Then Arachne steps back from her own tapestry. Her hands are trembling. You look, and oh, it's dangerous. Where Athena showed harmony, Arachne showed history, not the glory but the grit. Zeus seducing women in disguise, Hera punishing them out of jealousy, Dionysus laughing while mortals went mad, gods turning mortals into cows, trees, stars, not always kindly. It's magnificent, but it's also bold, too bold. Athena doesn't speak for a long moment. Then she exhales deeply. It's not the sound of someone angry. It's the sound of someone deeply annoyed that they have to be angry now. "You're very talented," she says. Arachne nods. "I know." That's when it happens. Not lightning, not shouting. Just a shift in the air. The kind that makes your skin tighten. The kind that makes birds stop mid-song. Athena straightens. Her face smooths like marble. The smile is gone. "Do you know what hubris is?" she asks. Arachne shrugs, still defiant. "It's what the gods call it when mortals get too good." "No," Athena says. "It's what mortals call it when they forget they're mortal." There's silence. A spider crawls across your foot. You pretend not to notice. Historians still argue whether this moment actually happened, if Arachne was real, if Athena truly walked the earth, if looms could spark divine wrath. But the stories remain, and in them this is the moment everything tilts. Because Athena isn't just insulted, she's disappointed. That's worse. You can feel it in the way the morning air shifts. You can feel it in the way villagers step back, unsure if they're watching brilliance or blasphemy. Arachne meets her gaze unflinching, and just for a second you think Athena smiled again, not with kindness, but with that quiet look gods wear when they've already made up their minds. You can feel the silence thickening like honey around your ankles as Athena steps back from her loom. There's no grand exit, no triumphant thunder or theatrical glow. Just the soft sound of thread unwinding, the faint creak of wood in the heat, and the kind of pause that presses itself against your ribs. You look from goddess to mortal, and back again, unsure who has just won, if it even matters. For a moment, all you hear is the slow snap of tension loosening. A bird calls somewhere far away, too nervous to get any closer. A breeze stirs the dust at your feet, but it doesn't cool the heat that's rising in the space between them. Athena's face is unreadable. That kind of unreadable that feels practiced. Like she spent centuries sculpting her expressions to hide what they truly mean. Arachne wipes the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. She's still breathing heavily. Not from fear, but from focus, the kind of effort that leaves your muscles twitching even after you've stopped. Her fingers, you notice, are still flexing, still itching to weave something else. Athena steps to the side, and that's when you see it. A second loom. It wasn't there before. You're almost certain you would have noticed. It leans a little to the left, slightly crooked, like it's been dragged out of a back room and forgotten for years. The threads on it shimmer faintly thinner than silk, finer than anything a mortal could spin. Maybe it's always been there, waiting for the right moment to be seen. Or maybe Athena conjured it from a single thought. Hard to tell with gods. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Arachne follows her gaze and without hesitation takes up her own shuttle again. Her lips press into a line that could be fear or fury or both. You don't blame her. She's just been challenged by a goddess again. But this time it's different. This isn't a punishment. Not yet. This feels like something else. A test. A trap. A conversation held in threads instead of words they begin to weave. Together. Not in harmony. This isn't a duet. It's a duel. But not the kind with swords or blood or raised voices. The only thing clashing here is perspective. Athena's tapestry gleams golden and serene. She starts at the beginning, she always does. You see the founding of Athens, her gift of the olive tree to the people, its silver-green leaves catching the light just so. You see lawgivers wrapped in robes, artists chiselling marble into gods, scholars with ink-stained fingers lifting scrolls toward candlelight. Everything is neat. Everything is ideal. The angles are sharp, the face is wise. History at its most symmetrical. Arachne, by contrast, doesn't start at the top. She starts in a corner, quietly, almost absently, as if she's sketching with thread. Her first image is small Zeus disguised as a swan, his beak curved in a smirk that makes you uncomfortable. Then another, Hera weeping alone. Then another. A priest turned into a stag for stumbling across Artemis bathing. Each scene tight and vivid like stories whispered in the back of a crowded room. You glance between them, you start to sweat. The truth is both are breathtaking. Athena weaves the version of history you'd want in your textbooks, the kind with clean heroes, noble intentions, clear causes and consequences. It's the version carved into temples, painted on vases, sung in amphitheatres, by men with clear voices and full stomachs. Arachne weaves the version that you know in your bones, the one full of questions and cracks and contradictions. The stories that don't get told at festivals, the ones that keep surviving anyway. You wonder if either one is lying, or if maybe they're both just showing you their truths. The villagers have stopped murmuring. At some point people stopped whispering and started watching in total silence. Even the goat from earlier seems too stunned to chew. The tapestries stretch further now, more vivid, more tangled. Arachne's shuttle flicks faster than a bird's wing. Athena's movements are calm but deliberate, almost regal in their restraint. You're watching not just a contest, but a philosophy argument unravelling in linen and silk. One thread declares that gods are wise rulers. Another thread hisses back, sometimes they are monsters in masks. One thread praises justice, another asks justice for whom? At some point Athena stops weaving. You don't notice it right away because you're still staring at Arachne's final panel. It's bold. Not just bold, it's scathing. A depiction of the gods lounging bored cruel. Mortals below them suffering in floods, in fire, in silence. Athena looks at it. Just looks. Her face doesn't change. Her hands are perfectly still. Then she turns her eyes toward Arachne. The crowd collectively forgets how to breathe. You brace for it, for the thunder, the flash, the smiting. That's how these stories usually go, right? But none of that happens. Instead, Athena says very quietly, "You wove truth." Then after a pause long enough to stretch across centuries, she adds, "But not mercy." Arachne doesn't flinch, and maybe that's what seals it. Athena steps closer. You think she's going to reach for Arachne's tapestry. Maybe tear it down. Maybe cover it with her own. Maybe set it ablaze with a single word. Instead, she places one hand gently on Arachne's shoulder. The entire crowd shudders as if the earth itself has been touched. Arachne looks up, and suddenly, without warning, her knees buckle. She drops to the floor. Not out of fear, out of something else. Her face twists, her hands claw at her arms, and then you realise her fingers are shrinking. Her limbs are bending in impossible directions. You open your mouth to say something, to cry out to help. But what help could you offer? You're watching transformation. No, not just watching. You are witnessing it. A mortal becoming myth. Arachne gasps. Not in pain, not exactly. More like surprise. Like someone waking up in the wrong body and realising it still fits somehow. Her skin ripples, hair recedes, eyes multiply, legs divide. In moments, the girl is gone. In her place, something small, black, gleaming. A creature scuttling toward the rafters, and from her spinnerets, yes, you know that word now, somehow spills a perfect strand of silk, pale as moonlight, as thin as regret. You don't hear Athena speak again, but you feel her final words settle in the air like dust. Now you will never stop weaving. And with that she vanishes. No storm, no rage, just silence. The villagers don't move, not yet. Not because they're frozen in fear, but because they don't quite know how to carry on. After all, it's not every day you see a goddess quietly rewrite someone's entire existence with a touch. Later that night you lie awake in the straw, staring at the beams overhead, and you notice a tiny, perfect spiral web in the corner of your room. You don't brush it away. Of course you don't. You wake before dawn, the world still folded in that hush between sleep and sun. The air is cool, almost shy, brushing your skin with the faint scent of olive trees and last night's dust. A spider's web clings to your sleeve. You didn't see it there when you fell asleep. It's delicate, symmetrical, and sparkles with morning dew as if even the tiniest creatures insist on artistry. You gently brush it off, but not without a whisper of apology. The walk begins slow. There's no destination, just a direction. East, maybe, or wherever the sky seems softer. You trail along the ridgeline of the low hills, your sandals brushing through thyme and wild sage. Behind you, the weaving contest is still the talk of the village, though no one speaks of it too loudly anymore. The gods have ears, and memories, and tempers. Best to let that story thread fade into silence. But of course you can't. Not really. Not when you saw Arachne's tapestry with your own eyes so fine it shimmered like water, so daring it dared to tell the truth. You remember the gasp that ran through the crowd like a dropped spindle, the way Athena's face darkened not with divine light, but something more human, hurt. And then the transformation, that strange, soft mercy wrapped in punishment. 8 legs, endless silk, a body built to hide in corners. You don't know if Arachne still remembers being a girl. You don't know if she dreams. The road winds down into a market town, one of those nameless clusters of clay rooftops and shouting vendors that smells like roasted onions and warm dust. You slip among the crowd, not invisible, but unremarkable, just another traveller with a threadbare satchel and quiet eyes. You buy a heel of bread still hot from the oven, and a single pear with the kind of bruising that makes it sweeter. At a stall selling dyed wool, you hear it, someone is whispering Arachne's name, you freeze. 2 women are bent over a basket of indigo skeins, their voices low but not low enough. Swear she spun it in one night. Not even Athena could shh. Don't say that here. You move on, heart ticking faster. It's not just your village then. The story is spreading. Like all good stories, it's shedding details and sprouting new ones she wove with silver thread. She never blinked. She cursed a prince for touching her loom. You hear another version an hour later, this time from a group of children playing near a fountain. In their telling, Arachne turned into a giant spider and now lives in temple ruins, weaving traps from clouds and catching dreams. You smile. That part might actually be true. After the town, the road narrows. You follow a dry stream bed for a while, the rocks smooth as if licked by time. You hum to yourself, a song you don't remember learning, the kind that feels older than language, the kind that keeps rhythm with your steps and your thoughts, and the wind brushing against your ears like an old friend with bad timing. Around midday you meet a trader with a donkey and a cart full of jars. He looks you over and without a word hands you a cup of cool water. It tastes like stone and rain and something sweet. He doesn't speak until you've finished. She's been here, he says. You raise an eyebrow. The girl, the one who weaves. Left a strand in my pack. Tied 3 jars together with silk so fine I thought it was a crack in the air. You try not to react. You just nod. She's heading north, I think he adds almost to himself. Or maybe south. It's hard to say with stories. He offers you a lift. You decline. Some paths are meant to be walked, not ridden. The hills grow steeper, the air thinner. You stop at a grove of cypress trees and press your palm against the bark. It's warm alive and smells faintly of resin and memory. You rest there a while, watching a spider build a web between 2 low branches. It works methodically, pulling and anchoring, circling back, adjusting, reinforcing. Not in a hurry, but not aimless either. It knows what it's making, even if it doesn't. You wonder if you do. When you leave the grove, your steps feel different, longer perhaps, or more certain. The road ahead dips into a wide valley, and there nestled between olive fields and sun-bleached walls is a small weaving town. You recognise it from stories. Here they say threads speak. Not aloud, of course. But if you run your fingers across the right tapestry, you'll hear something between a rustle and a sigh. The weavers here don't sell their work. They hang it from the town walls like prayers or warnings. You pass one that shows the story of Echo stitched entirely in reverse. Another shows an eagle transforming into a man, then back again endlessly. And then you see it. Hung high above the town square is a web. Not a tapestry, a web. Huge, delicate, perfect. It stretches between two buildings like a challenge. No one speaks of it. No one touches it. But you see the way people glance at it carefully sideways, like you might at a wound that's still healing. You sit beneath it and pull out your spindle. You don't know what you're spinning for, only that your hands seem to need to do it. A woman sits beside you without asking. She doesn't say hello, just starts weaving too. Her thread is red. After a long silence, she says, "They say Athena didn't mean for it to happen. You keep spinning. She meant to punish, yes, but she also admired her. Even the gods have to learn how to handle being surpassed." You finally glance at her. Her eyes are the colour of pomegranate seeds, sharp, knowing. She leans in, voice low. Historians still argue whether Arachne was punished for her arrogance or her accuracy. You smile, maybe both. She nods and ties off her thread. Maybe. Or maybe she was just the first to say what everyone else was too afraid to weave. She leaves without another word. You finish your thread and hang it on a branch. The wind catches it, and for a moment it almost looks like a spider's path. Not a trap, a signal. You sleep that night beneath the web, not out of rebellion, not out of devotion, just because it feels like the right place to rest. And when you dream of hands weaving themselves, becoming legs. Legs that dance through threads of moonlight. Legs that remember. You wake with the light tracing soft lines across your face, threads of gold filtering through the slats of a shutter that doesn't quite close. It takes you a moment to remember where you are. A weaving town. A story-stained village that doesn't so much exist on the map as it does between the folds of it. The room smells like olive oil and wool. Somewhere below, someone is boiling water and it steams upward, mixing with the faint musk of dye and charcoal ink. You sit up slowly. Something tugs against your tunic. It's a web, not a big one. Not the dramatic sort that arcs across temple ruins or drapes over ancient trees like forgotten lace. This one's small, tentative, strung between your bag and the windowsill. A delicate net of morning dew glistening like a whisper caught mid-sentence. You hesitate. You want to brush it away, but there's a kind of reverence to it. Like maybe it's watching you. Like maybe it remembers. So instead you work around it. You tie your satchel carefully. You leave the fig inside. The one with the spiral of silk around its stem. Feels wrong to eat it. Wrong to discard it. So you carry it gently like a promise or an unanswered question. Outside the market is just beginning to stir. Stalls creak open like old men stretching their joints. A rooster crows late and unapologetic. The first threads of gossip unravel across the cobbled streets. Someone's daughter is betrothed. Someone's husband bought bad grain. Someone swears they saw a spider the size of a cat crouched in the rafters of the dye house, but only for a moment. You nod politely as you pass. You don't stop. Not today. Instead, you follow the narrow lane leading out of town past the terracotta chimneys and shuttered workshops until the road becomes a path and the path becomes suggestion. You're not sure where you're going, only that your feet seem to know even if you don't. The air thickens with cypress and dust. Every now and then a breeze finds you and tugs your sleeves like a child eager to show you something. You pause beneath a cluster of fig trees and chew on a leaf. It's bitter. It reminds you of home. Not your home, but someone's, maybe Arachne's. maybe the one she never got to build. Eventually you arrive at a small hill overlooking a field stitched with vines, and there nestled like a secret is a tiny shrine, the kind of place even the gods forget about until the wildflowers bloom just right. A cracked statue of Athena stands at its centre. No spear, no shield, just an owl perched on one shoulder, and the ghost of a smile that could mean anything. You sit. You unpack the fig, the one wrapped in web, the one you've carried too far to abandon now. You place it gently at the statue's feet. An offering, a joke, a conversation starter, hard to say. Above you the trees sway. A branch creaks. You glance up and there, yes, there is another web, a larger one, strung between two olive limbs like a hammock for moonlight. In its centre rests a spider, small still, watching. You don't speak, not because you're afraid it might answer, but because you're afraid it already knows the question. You reach into your bag and pull out the charm the girl gave you yesterday, the little clay spider. You tie it to your belt with a bit of red thread, maybe for protection, maybe for memory, maybe just because you don't want to forget that someone somewhere still believes in the power of small silent things. A rustle pulls your gaze to the path. A traveller approaches a man leading a donkey stacked high with baskets. He doesn't look surprised to see you. He nods, sets down a crate and sits beside you with a kind of sigh that's been aged in oak barrels. You've seen the webs, haven't you? You don't answer. Not yet. He chuckles. It's all right. They're everywhere now, town to town, roof to rafter. Some folk think it's just a good year for spiders. Others think she's still spinning. You raise an eyebrow. Arachne, he says. Or whatever she's become. Whatever she always was. He offers you a fig. Not wrapped in silk. Just a fig. You take it. He continues. They say if you find a fig with a spiral of web around the stem, you've been chosen. For what he grins, that's the part no one agrees on. The fig is warm from the sun. You bite into it. Sweet. Softer than you expect. The juice runs down your thumb. The trader stands. Dusts off his tunic. Adjusts a strap. You'll know what to do when the time comes, he says. Then he's gone. You stay a while longer watching the web in the olive tree tremble with the weight of nothing. Then you rise, leave a coin at the statue's base out of habit, not belief, and continue on. The path narrows again, curling like thread. You walk until you find a river so clear it reflects your shadow before your feet. You follow it upstream past goats with suspicious eyes and a flock of birds that rise in a V without warning. They vanish over the ridge. You keep walking. At twilight you find a farmhouse, crumbling, long abandoned except for the vines that have taken up residence in the windows. Inside the fireplace still holds the shape of old warmth. You build a small flame just enough to boil water and dry your socks. You hang your satchel on a nail. You sleep with your head against the hearthstone and a dream of silk. In the dream you stand before Athena not as a goddess, not as thunder or war, but as a weaver. She holds a spindle in one hand and a piece of thread in the other. What would you make if you could, she asks. You open your mouth, but no sound comes out. She nods. That's the problem with threads. They only speak after they're tied. You wake before dawn. The fire is embers. The wind has shifted. Your satchel is still hanging from the nail, but now a web stretches from its flap to the ceiling beam above, and in the centre of it, just for a moment, you think you see her. Legs curled, eyes closed, spinning. Not a trap, not a curse, just a story that refuses to end. You wake to the sound of thread being pulled. Not loudly, more like the faint rasp of something being stretched and coaxed through air, the way silk might whisper across bark, or how linen might sigh when tugged through a tight seam. It's not real. Or at least not fully. But it feels like a sound you've heard before, in a dream, in the corner of a silent room. in the hush that follows words no one dared say. Your feet are already moving before your thoughts catch up. The morning is soft, cool, the kind that leaves dew clinging to everything like it's too shy to let go. You walk through the edge of the olive grove where the trees bend slightly as though eavesdropping, and then you follow the slope downward where a cluster of low houses gather like secrets. No one greets you, but no one stops you either. You pass a well, a donkey tied lazily to a fig tree, a little boy spinning a stick through the dust like it's a chariot wheel, and there it is, loomwood. You smell it before you see it. The unmistakable scent of cedar smoke, old yarn and dye gone slightly sour. The scent of effort and repetition. The weaver's shed is open. No door. Just a curtain of linen fluttering like it's lost the rhythm of the wind. Inside, wooden beams dark with age, sun bleeding through a gap in the roof and 3 looms. All empty, except one. This one waits for you. A spindle rests nearby, thread already looped. Someone has started for you. That someone could be you last time you were here. Or someone else entirely. You don't question it. Not now. Not when the pattern in your hands feels familiar and strange all at once. You sit. You begin. It takes longer today. Your fingers are stiff and the thread keeps slipping. But eventually the rhythm finds you. It always does. Over, under, beat, tighten, repeat. What are you weaving? Well, that depends. Right now it's something that looks like the edge of a road maybe. A series of spirals though you didn't plan for them. A single eye, not human, not spider, staring calmly from the centre of a broken wheel. No one told you what to make, and no one needs to. That's the gift and the curse of it. The freedom to make something beautiful. The responsibility to see it through. Your back aches, your neck stings, but still you weave. You remember stories whispered in corners. Some say Athena never meant to hurt Arachne. That the punishment, if you can call it that, was never truly about vengeance. That it was in fact a sideways compliment. Because transformation in myth is never random. It is precise. It is tailored. Prometheus stole fire, so he got chains and an eagle. Narcissus adored himself, so he became the flower that bends to its own reflection. And Arachne. She challenged a goddess to a craft. She didn't die, she wove, and she wove still. You glance up from the loom. Outside the wind has changed. A strand of web clings to the edge of the roof beam, now quivering gently in the breeze. It's thin, almost invisible, but it's there, like punctuation in an otherwise silent sentence. Historians still debate the symbolism. Is Arachne's fate a warning to mortals not to overstep their bounds? A parable about hubris stitched in myth and handed down as polite caution? Or was it admiration in disguise? Was the spider a gift of autonomy, a new domain entirely? After all, spiders never ask for permission to create. They don't hold contests. They don't seek approval. They find a corner and they spin. You shift in your seat and your back complains loudly. Your fingers are cramped, but you smile through it. The pattern on the loom grows strange. A pair of eyes in shadow. A loom abandoned mid-weave. A girl looking back at you, not scared. Just waiting. Maybe it's Arachne, or maybe it's every girl who ever dared to think her work mattered more than who made it. You don't stop weaving, not yet. Outside the village moves slowly. You hear the clink of pails at the well. A goat sneezes. Someone laughs at a joke you'll never hear the end of. And still you sit loop by loop, a kind of quiet defiance in every thread. The old woman returns at some point. The same one from before, or a different one with the same eyes. She says nothing, just watches. You pause, she steps forward, places something in your hand. It's not a needle, it's a small piece of cloth, frayed, old, the edges uneven, but the pattern unmistakable, a spiral. Not perfect, but close. You nod. She nods back. That's enough. Then she leaves again. You stay. A while longer at least. By the time you rise, the loom has claimed most of your energy. Your legs ache. Your fingertips are dusted in dye. But the cloth you leave behind is real. Imperfect, but real. Outside, a storm threatens the horizon. But it doesn't feel urgent. Not yet. You hang the cloth on a peg near the door, one among many. The patterns all different, all echoing one another. Spiders, yes, and looms. And sometimes, if you squint gods who look a little too much like people, you step out, and then you see it. A fig tree. And at the very top, curling gently around one fruit, is a strand of silk. It's not dramatic, just a spiral. Subtle. Elegant. And it makes you wonder, was she here? Did she come through? Did she leave something behind? Or maybe she never left at all? Maybe she's just been watching, weaving, and waiting for someone like you to notice. You reach up, you pluck the fig, you do not eat it. Not today, not yet. Because some stories don't end in endings. Some stories end in echoes. And if you're lucky, really lucky, you carry the thread a little farther. You don't expect mercy from gods. Not really. Not even the ones with soft eyes and olive branches in their hair. When a deity walks among mortals, things tend to end badly for the mortals. Usually with thunderbolt snakes, or being turned into something deeply inconvenient like a tree or a rock or a cautionary tale. And you standing very still in the corner of the crowd, breath held somewhere in the middle of your chest, can already feel the shift in the air before Athena speaks. It's the kind of silence that makes your skin notice how small and fleshy it is. Arachne has finished her tapestry. You know this not because she says anything, but because Athena has gone completely still. The kind of still that makes you think of statues. Not the soft ones made of marble with moss creeping down their cheeks, but the older ones chipped and strange, the ones that still have traces of paint in their eyes, as if they were once meant to move. And maybe now she will. The two tapestries hang side by side, Athena's glowing with divine victory gods in gleaming armour, mortals with reverent expressions, balance and order, stitched into every perfect line. And Arachne's, well, Arachne's tells the other stories, the ones not meant for daylight, the betrayals, the transformations, the moments where gods grew petty and cruel, where they punished love and curiosity, and the occasional perfectly harmless mortal hubris. And every thread is flawless. The crowd doesn't speak. You can hear the scratch of a goat hoof on dirt, someone shifting their weight. Even the wind seems hesitant, because what happens next? No one wants to be part of that. Athena steps forward. Her face is unreadable. That in itself is terrifying. When a human is angry, they flush, they shout, they break. When a goddess is angry, she decides. And sometimes the consequences arrive centuries later, woven into curses and bloodlines and laws. She raises a hand, not the arm of a warrior, but the hand of someone tired of being questioned. And for a moment everyone, especially Arachne, thinks this is it. Not just a slap, not just a punishment, but annihilation. A flicker of divine wrath that will leave behind only dust, or maybe a cautionary fresco painted in red ochre and ash. But it doesn't come. Instead, Athena says something no one hears. Her lips move, a single word, maybe two, and Arachne begins to change. It's not the kind of transformation that happens with trumpets and thunder. No, this one is quieter, more unsettling. Her spine arches first, then her limbs bend the wrong way. Her fingers stretch, then multiply. Her face elongates, collapses inward, and the crowd shudders as if witnessing something they were never meant to see. And you feel it in your gut, that this wasn't fury, it wasn't justice, It was something stranger, sadder. A curse, yes, but one meant to spare her. Because Athena doesn't destroy Arachne. She doesn't erase her work or burn her loom or scatter her threads across the sea. She doesn't even cast her out. She simply changes her. Arachne's body becomes smaller, darker, her skin taking on a sheen like wet obsidian. Her arms multiply, her fingers turn to legs. Her lips vanish, but something of her remains. A tilt of the head, a twitch of silk. And then silently she scuttles up the wall of the temple. No one breathes. Athena turns to the crowd. Her face is still unreadable, but her eyes flick upward just once to the corner of the ceiling, where Arachne now waits suspended between beams and shadow. "Let her weave," Athena says. That's it. That's the whole speech. No divine thunder, no echoing proclamation. Just those 3 words. You think for a moment you see something shift in her expression. Not regret, not forgiveness, but maybe recognition. Because Arachne did what gods hate the most, she told the truth beautifully. And the gods, well, they prefer their truths a little more flattered. As Athena walks away, her cloak brushing the dust, the crowd stays frozen. No one applauds, no one cheers. You can't help it, your eyes drift up. Arachne is still there. Not quite a girl, not quite a spider. Something in between. She's already started to spin. The silk gleams in the last light of evening. Later the village will not speak of this day with awe. They will murmur, they will argue, they will say it didn't happen like that. That the girl insulted the goddess and was rightfully punished. That the tapestry was blasphemy. That no one could weave that finely. That maybe she cheated. Historians still argue whether the myth of Arachne was meant to inspire fear or obedience or humility. Whether it was a warning to women about ambition, or just another strange fable stuffed with moral grey zones and odd animal transformations. Some versions say Athena felt pity, others claim she acted out of rage and regretted it only later. A few even suggest Arachne's skill lived on in spiders, who still weave stories into the corners of our ceilings waiting for someone curious enough to notice. You remember the silence. You remember the way the loom trembled before the change. You remember that even a goddess didn't unravel Arachne's tapestry. She just made sure no one else could see it. You don't notice the first thread until it glimmers in the corner of your vision, just a shimmer really like moonlight brushing a water surface. It's impossibly delicate, stretched from the rafter of the old weaving hall to the edge of a crumbling fresco depicting Athena all stern eyes and sharp posture. But the thread trembles gently in the breeze, as if it remembers something, as if it's the last note of a story that no one dares to say aloud. You take a cautious step closer, your sandals brushing through the dust, careful not to disturb the thread. It's not fear exactly, it's reverence. Because after what you've just witnessed, the goddess, the tapestry, the transformation, you no longer see thread as just thread. It's a voice now, a memory, a warning maybe. Arachne is gone from view but not from presence. She didn't vanish, not exactly. She simply moved beyond the places eyes naturally rest. Into corners, into eaves, into shadows. And yet you feel her everywhere. The first spider, the cursed artist, now spinning stories in silk instead of yarn. Her 8 legs aren't shaking. They're working calmly, deliberately, as if guided by instinct older than language. The room she left behind is still half full with villagers pretending not to panic. No one wants to be the first to speak. A few are already rationalizing what they saw. It must have been an illusion, someone whispers. A trick of the gods, offers another. No one dares say she was right. Her tapestry was true. Athena couldn't deny it. So she turned the girl into a creature that can still weave but no longer speak. Some call that mercy. But as you walk through the village the next day, you start to realise something Arachne hasn't left. Not truly. Her legacy is tangled into the very corners of this place. Threads stretch across doorways between fence posts inside the warped window frames of sleeping houses. Every web is a whisper, and oddly no one sweeps them away. Historians still argue whether ancient Greeks revered spiders or simply tolerated them. There's no firm consensus. Some pottery fragments depict arachnids nestled near looms. Are they symbols of skill or pestilence? One carving from Corinth shows a spider suspended above a doorway. Was it there to bring luck, or to ward off divine punishment? The scholarly debate stretches on as tangled as one of Arachne's own creations. One camp insists these creatures were seen as omens, small agents of the gods. Another group claims the myth of Arachne was used to scare young girls into modesty, don't overreach, or you'll grow extra legs. Still others think she was a hero, defiant, in truth punished not for arrogance but accuracy. None of these scholars have been to this village. You suspect they'd learn more by watching the weavers than by poring over scrolls. The looms here haven't stopped, but something has changed. The way the women sit, the care they take in their patterns. A few even leave small offerings, now a flower tucked near the frame, a bead of oil, a folded scrap of dyed cloth. Nothing formal, just acknowledgements, signs of respect. One of the older women glances up as you pass her doorway. She still listens, she says without prompting. You blink. Arachne. The woman nods, reaching into a basket to pull out a spindle. She watches from the corners. Doesn't speak, of course, but her webs talk. You don't know what that means exactly, but it makes sense in that quiet folkloric way that older truths tend to hold. You sleep that night in a borrowed room with rough linens and no shutters. The wind slips in, and you dream of thread. Not rope or cloth or knots, but thread soft and shimmering, looping into spirals that don't seem to end. In the dream, your hands try to follow the pattern, but they're clumsy. The silk slides away as if it's not meant for you. You wake just before dawn, heart slow but steady, and notice a new web across the top of the window frame. It wasn't there last night. Perfectly symmetrical. Nothing caught in it. Except maybe the dream itself. In the following days, you notice that the villagers talk differently about spiders. Not with fear or disgust, but familiarity. Like an odd aunt who never married and keeps strange hours. One child points to a fat web above her cradle and says that's hers, like naming a family heirloom. Another boy brings a jar to the market, not with a beetle or lizard, but with a spider inside web, and all carried carefully like a lantern of stories. And always there's thread. You find it at the olive press, spun between branches. You spot it in the chapel above the doorframe. The priest doesn't swat it down. He crosses himself and steps under it. You see it near the bakery, catching flour dust like fairy snow. They're small things, delicate, easy to miss, until they're not. One evening, you venture to the ruins at the edge of the village. Once a temple, now just scattered stone and ivy. But at its centre, framed by two broken columns, is the largest web you've ever seen. It stretches wider than a table suspended between nothing you can see. It moves slightly with the wind, yet somehow never breaks. At its centre, a single olive pit perfectly placed. You don't speak, you just sit, and for the first time in a long time, you feel like you're part of something older than fear. They say Arachne still weaves, that her silk crosses more than windows and rafters, that when a child dreams of strange patterns, or when a seamstress finds her fingers moving faster than thought, Arachne is there. Watching, helping maybe, or just making sure the story doesn't disappear. And sometimes, if a tapestry tells too much truth, they say her thread appears in the corner, not to punish, just to remind. The gods may write myths, but Arachne threads them into the world, one silk strand at a time. You've seen her work now. It's stitched into the village, spun into doorways, perched on old beams like whispers that remember. And so, as your journey continues, you begin to notice a strange thing. Athena never speaks of it, never names the girl, never refers to what happened in the weaving hall that day. But she starts leaving spiders, not real ones, motifs. The temple at Eleusis adds spider etchings to its stone columns, fine lines that swirl like woven glyphs barely visible, unless the light hits just so. A new mosaic in Corinth quietly includes a single black shape nestled into a tapestry border. At first no one notices, but over time they accumulate carvings, painting stitches in the hems of priestesses' robes. In Athens, a young sculptor adds an 8-legged creature to the back of a marble shield where only the wall will see it. No one mentions it aloud, but the pattern spreads like silk on the wind. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, war and craft, is not known for sentiment, but she is precise, and now you begin to think she's not forgetting Arachne. She's curating her, memorializing the story not with tears but with architecture. Perhaps that's why, centuries later, even the Roman copies of Greek temples retain those strange 8-legged motifs. Historians often wave them off decorative, they say. Symbolic of wisdom, others argue, but deep down you know, this is no accident. It's a quiet form of divine guilt. One scholar you meet along your journey, an older man with more ink than hair, leans in close and says, "She never meant to make a monster. But gods don't apologize. They commission murals instead." He chuckles, then returns to his scroll. There's something oddly touching about it all. Athena could have erased Arachne entirely, turned her story into actual rumour, but she didn't. She left her alive in a new form. And now, instead of one tapestry, Arachne has hundreds, thousands. Every web is hers, every spider a chapter. In the goddess's own temple on the Acropolis, a priestess shows you a ceiling fresco. It's hard to see without lying flat on the stone floor, but once you do it becomes clear. Thin silver lines form a spiral web behind the golden shields and olive branches. At the very centre, just beneath the painted foot of Athena herself, is a single curled shape, small, black, unmistakable. She says it's protection, the priestess murmurs, a net to catch misfortune. You nod, but you wonder if it's not also penance. Some say gods never regret, that they move on indifferent, undeterred, but that's not what you see here. You see a pattern forming a divine habit of remembering in silence. Athena never reversed the curse, but she made sure the world would never forget who Arachne was or what she wove. That in a way is its own kind of reparation. And though spiders still raise goosebumps in some, they're also honoured in small ways. A baker you meet in Thebes shapes his loaves into 8-limbed spirals on festival days. A girl in Delphi embroiders spiderwebs into the hem of her wedding robe, not for luck, but to remind herself that truth matters more than comfort. In Rhodes, a merchant tells you his wife once met a spider that spoke. You raise an eyebrow. He nods, said it warned her not to boast. You smile. The moral travels well. As you walk away, you spot a small web in the olive grove backlit by the setting sun. It glows faintly gold threads trembling as if touched by unseen fingers. And suddenly, the world feels both very large and very intimate, woven together by strands you'll never fully understand, but that hold you nonetheless. Arachne is not gone. She's just telling her stories differently now. And as days stretch into weeks, you begin to notice more than just motifs and murals. You see the shift in conversation. The way village weavers speak her name in a hushed reverent tone, not with fear, but with familiarity. Not as a warning, but as a guide. A young boy, no more than 10, explains to you that his grandmother told him spiders spin dreams into the air. That if you sleep beneath a spider's web, your thoughts are safer. You ask if he believes that. He shrugs. Doesn't matter. Grandma does. Even the temples begin to reflect this quiet devotion. Near Delos, a shrine to Artemis includes a small carving of Arachne tucked beneath the god's bow, a subtle act of mythological layering. In a lesser-known sanctuary to Demeter, votive offerings are tied with spider silk thread. Some believe they'll reach the underworld faster that way. Others say it's just tradition, but even traditions begin somewhere. Back in Athens, a scribe shows you a scroll not ancient but recent, a retelling of the Arachne myth that ends differently. In this version, Athena lets her live, invites her into the goddess's own temple to teach mortals how to weave. It's not canon, the scribe admits, but it's a gentler version, and sometimes people need gentler stories. You ask if that's how he prefers it to end. He pauses, then says, "It's not about preference, it's about balance." Balance. A concept Athena knows well. One afternoon you find yourself resting in an olive grove not far from Corinth. The sun dapples through the leaves, insects hum in the air, and in the silence you hear a faint click, click, click. It's a spider. She's building slowly, rhythmically, unbothered by your presence. Her legs dance across invisible scaffolding. Silk stretches, catches the light holds. It's a miracle in motion no less beautiful than anything made by human hands. You wonder if Athena ever sits like this, watching, listening. If she ever thinks back to the day she snapped that tapestry, the moment her own hands trembled not from rage but recognition. And you wonder if when she sees a perfect web trembling in the wind, she finally smiles. Not with pride, but with peace. You don't expect to hear much more about Athena. Not now. Not after curses and transformations, after a loom snapped in fury, and a girl became something eight-legged and whisper quiet. But myths don't end just because their drama does. They drift. They find new threads to catch on. They tug softly at the corners of your day until before you know it, you're following them again, like an errant thread dangling from your sleeve that you were warned not to pull. You pull it anyway, so tonight you're walking again, down a rocky footpath carved into the slope above Delphi. The light is low, your sandals scuff the dust, and ahead, the air smells faintly of figs and distant incense. Delphi is no ordinary stop. The people here talk like everything is a metaphor. You ask for directions and someone tells you, all paths bend eventually. Helpful. A man selling pottery smiles and offers you a riddle instead of a price. You answer incorrectly, but he says that was the right kind of wrong. He gives you a cracked cup with a spider painted on the base. It wasn't there a moment ago, and everywhere you begin to see webs. Not grand glistening things hanging from the trees, but tiny ones on shrines carved into temple columns, embroidered discreetly into the hems of robes. It's as if Arachne never left the myth at all, she just packed her things and moved in. The temple at Delphi is quieter than expected. You imagine more chanting, more smoke. Instead, it feels like a waiting room for the world's oldest oracle. Cool marble, nervous whispers, and a sense that the building itself is listening. You're allowed inside, but only after you wash your hands in a bowl of water that smells faintly of thyme. Inside, you find a tapestry hung behind the chamber where the Pythia sits. It isn't massive, and it doesn't shimmer with gold. It's soft and dark, made from wool that's been dyed a deep olive green. And on it, woven so subtly you almost miss it, are hundreds of interlocking circles, spirals, some sharp, some wide like breath held too long. There's no image of Apollo, no laurel crown, no dramatic prophecies stitched in Latin. Just webs, all threads. A young woman in ceremonial white sees you staring. Each answer she says softly is just a thread. You're meant to weave the rest. You nod. You don't know what it means, but your spine feels a little straighter hearing it. Outside, in the winding market, stalls below, the story continues. You see bracelets made of knotted thread, 8 loops soft blue or cream said to bring mental clarity or gentle fate. One girl braids one into your wrist and tells you it helps her focus while she learns to read. I like the feeling of weaving something she says, even if it's just a story. You think of Arachne, once cursed for honesty in thread, and now long after her hands were taken from her, people still remember, still echo. In the shadow of the temple, a man tells a story as he sharpens his blade. He's a fisherman, or maybe just someone who looks like one. My net, he says proudly, is the strongest in this village, not because of my knots, because of the pattern. Orb weaver, like the spiders. They know things about tension. Another man scoffs. It's luck, he mutters, but you catch him watching the first man's hands as he ties the lines. In Thebes, a weaver shows you her workshop. It smells like lanolin and burnt rosemary. She gestures toward a wooden shelf near the window. That's where she lives, she says. A spider. Just one. Always spinning. Never in the same place twice. You glance over and see a tidy spiral of silk stretched across the corner. The spider isn't visible, but something about it feels attended to. I never kill them, the weaver adds. I think it's rude. She laughs, but there's a softness behind her eyes that doesn't feel like a joke. Later you meet a girl no older than 12 sitting cross-legged on a dusty floor sketching spiderwebs onto parchment. Not realistic ones, stylized, geometric. You ask what she's drawing and she shrugs. Memory, she says, from a dream. In the dream, she says she was weaving with hands that weren't hers. They were longer, thinner. Silk came from her fingertips. You don't ask more questions. She doesn't offer more answers. But you sit beside her for a while, watching the webs grow darker and more detailed with each stroke of the pen. Historians still argue whether there was ever true worship of Arachne. There are whispers of hidden shrines of spider-shaped coins found in burial jars of funerary cloth stitched with 8-limbed figures dancing across the edge. Some believe the goddess became a cautionary tale. Others think she became something quieter, a household protector, a whisper to the wise. Perhaps it's better that way. Not all power comes with thunder. Some say that old spinners in Rhodes would hang fresh webs across their doors before beginning a tapestry to borrow precision. Others say it was to keep flies out. Still, the ritual remains. On the southern coast, a trader tells you her mother used to dip thread in vinegar and trace spirals on the doorframe every full moon. So the stories don't forget where we live, she says. In Crete, someone swears that every time a loom is left unattended for 3 nights in a row, a perfect web appears on the shuttle. You have to greet it out loud, they warn. Otherwise she might not leave. A myth that becomes a warning, becomes a superstition, becomes a prayer. And here you are, walking with all of them tangled around your shoulders like a warm, invisible shawl. The story doesn't vanish just because the gods moved on. Arachne lives in temples and attics, in old threadbare quilts and the hush before weaving begins. She lives in the hands that thread needles, in the mouths that tell children not to lie, and in the ones who dare to question the patterns carved by power. You camp by an olive grove one night, and there where the bark splits just so you find a web catching moonlight. Not special, not magical, just present. You whisper thanks for what you're not sure, but it feels right. And the next morning there's a new thread tied around your pack. You don't remember placing it. You leave it there. Somewhere in your satchel a fig is wrapped tight in silk, a perfect spiral. A gift, a warning, or just lunch. You walk on. You wake up earlier than usual and something feels off. Not ominous exactly, just delicate. Like the whole morning has been strung up in a web and you've walked right into it. There's dew in the grass, but it clings in geometric shapes, fine threads, glinting in the sunlight like someone sketched constellations just above the ground. When you roll up your bedding, you find a tiny spiral of silk on the inside of your cloak. It's not alarming. In fact, it looks rather purposeful. precise. You brush it off carefully as though it might still be watching. Today is Fig Market Day. At least it used to be. You've lost track of how long you've been travelling. Your feet are dusty, your satchel smells faintly of thyme and last week's cheese, and somewhere deep inside the fabric folds you know there's a squished fig you meant to eat yesterday. Maybe today's the day. You sit under an olive tree that's been leaning west since the time of Theseus, open the satchel and freeze. Right there around the fig is a perfect spiderweb, a spiral so delicate it could have been spun by moonlight. Every strand is spaced evenly anchored across the fig like a net of silk jewellery. No dust, no dead insects, no spider in sight. Just a web holding a fig as if protecting it, or hiding it. You stare. Not because you're afraid, but because something about it feels intentional, like you've been handed a message, or a memory. You've heard stories, of course, old ones, about a girl named Arachne and a goddess who didn't like being bested, about a weaving contest that turned divine, about transformation and punishment and the way pride tangles itself in the most inconvenient corners. But you also remember the smaller things, the details the storytellers mumble through. That Arachne's web was her answer. That some say spiders don't just spin, they remember. That in quiet households across ancient Greece, a spider in the rafters meant something, a warning or a witness. Or historians still argue whether spiders were feared or revered in the Greek world. Some ancient texts reference them only as pests, nuisances to be swept away with the rest of the dust. But others linger longer on them, associating spiders with patience craft secrets. Arachne's punishment may have been harsh, but her legacy crept through temples, and households spun itself into legend. You bite into the fig web and all. It's sweet overripe, really. The silk doesn't taste like anything, just vanishes on your tongue like a sigh. Still, it's the kind of fig that makes you pause after the first bite and quietly decide to savour the rest instead of devouring it. You place the half-eaten fruit beside you on a stone and lean back against the olive tree. The branches above sway just slightly, and for a moment you think you see something move, something small and eight-legged, but it's gone before you can be sure. Around you more webs appear, not all at once, but gradually. One in the crook of a tree branch, another in the corner of a low stone wall, one glinting just under a large fig leaf. They're everywhere once you know how to look, some fresh, some tattered and old like ruins of forgotten conversations, the kind that aren't cleaned away, just left to dissolve in time. You remember a story you once heard from a market trader's wife. She swore that in Delphi a spider once spun a web between two columns of the temple, overnight so perfect that the priests refused to sweep it away. They claimed it was a message, or a curse, or maybe a prayer that the gods hadn't gotten around to answering yet. Spiders, the woman had said, could hear secrets, could trap words. She had laughed when she said it, but she hadn't been joking. The wind shifts and your satchel moves with it slightly. Inside, something rattles. You reach in and find not the fig pit you expected, but a strand of silk attached to a curled line of ink. It isn't writing exactly, more like a shape, a spiral drawn faintly on the cloth inside the satchel, like someone left a mark you weren't supposed to see until now. You didn't draw it. And it wasn't there yesterday. Maybe it's just dirt, or a trick of the folds, but the longer you stare, the more it seems deliberate, like something was watching or listening. It's hard to explain this sort of thing to someone else. If you told a priest, he'd tell you it was a sign from Athena. If you told a sailor, he'd say you've eaten spoiled olives and need more salt. If you told your neighbour's goat, it might at least chew thoughtfully and not judge. But deep down, you know it means something. You sling your satchel over your shoulder and decide to walk again, not away, not toward anything, just forward. Past the leaning olive trees, toward a village you might have passed through in a dream. The kind of place where the air always smells like crushed mint and burnt bread, and where even the chickens look like they have opinions. As you walk, the webs multiply. On fence posts, on well handles, across laundry lines. Some are fresh, others are faded little ghost webs holding onto the memory of a shape. You feel like you're walking through a story only the spiders remember, and they're slowly letting you in on the plot. Maybe Arachne never meant to challenge the gods. Maybe she was just telling the truth, and the truth made everyone uncomfortable. Maybe her transformation wasn't a punishment, it was a way of making sure her version of the story stuck around. Because gods have thunder, and mortals have memories, but spiders have patience, they rebuild, quietly, without asking, without waiting for applause. You wonder what Athena thinks of it all now. Does she still feel justified, still feel slighted? Or has she looked at enough webs, watched them glisten in the corners of temples, in the rafters of weavers' homes to know that maybe Arachne had a point? You smile. You keep walking. A single thread of silk catches on your sleeve and trails beside you like a leash. You let it stay, just in case it's leading you somewhere. The grove is quieter than silence itself, as though the very air has paused to listen. You sit beneath an olive tree whose limbs stretch out like the arms of an old friend offering shade, and in the dappled light you can almost believe time has curled in on itself. The sun slinks behind the hills, dragging its long, golden robe with it, and the world turns the colour of aged parchment. It's here in this fold of land, too small to be a hill, and too large to be a bump, that your thoughts begin to tangle like thread caught in the fingers of someone distracted. You didn't come to this place for answers. In truth, you barely knew it existed. The locals called it Athena's Hollow, not because anything divine had happened here, at least not officially, but because people claim the air was different, charged like the leftover buzz of thunder long after a storm has passed. And sometimes silk would appear between trees overnight, woven into spirals so intricate they made lace look like clumsy scribbles. The first one you saw today was so fine it caught the light but not the wind. It stretched between two olive branches, a perfect web with no spider in sight. You stared at it for a long time, and it stared right back, or so it felt. The old woman at the village well had warned you. "Don't touch the silk," she said. She's still watching. When you asked who, she muttered something about looms and lightning and a girl who talked too boldly with her hands. You didn't listen. And now here you are, pulling a needle from your satchel. You don't know how to weave, but you can sew. A little. Enough to mend a tunic. Enough to make a hem less ragged. And in this moment it feels like the only reasonable thing to do. You take out a scrap of cloth, just a corner of an old linen shawl, and begin to stitch. Not letters, not symbols. Just thread moving through fabric, in and out like breath. The trees lean in as if curious. You keep sewing. Your stitches aren't beautiful. Some are crooked and a few loop back on themselves like thoughts you've tried to forget. But something about this mess feels familiar, honest. A pattern emerges not in the design but in the rhythm. A kind of soft insistence. The same rhythm you imagine that Arachne might have known. You think of her not the spider, not the cursed myth, but the girl. The one who saw truth and dared to capture it in thread. You picture her fingers calloused and nimble, dancing across the loom like birds on a fence. Did she know what would happen? Did she guess, even as she pulled her final weft, that a goddess would not take kindly to honesty? Historians still argue whether the contest was ever real, whether Arachne even lived, or if she was simply a cautionary tale stitched into generations like a hem that never comes undone. Some say she was a real weaver from Lydia, others that she's nothing more than metaphor with 8 legs. But here in this grove you can't help but feel she was real enough to matter. And that's what myths are for, aren't they? To remind us that the things we imagine might once have been true. There's a knot in your thread now. You pause. The knot has no business being there. You You've been careful, gentle, deliberate. And yet, there it is. Right in the middle of your work, grinning like a mistake that thinks it's clever. You try to undo it. Slowly. Patiently. You even whisper to it as if it might feel guilty enough to release its grip. It does not. The knot stays, so you stitch around it. Because isn't that the story? The gods tie knots in the lives of mortals, and mortals, for all their fuss and fraying, keep sewing anyway. Above you the sky darkens. It deepens from blue to velvet, and stars begin to appear not one by one, but all at once, like shy guests finally entering a party. You lean back and rest your head against the tree. Your fingers still hold the needle, but you've stopped sewing now. Instead, you trace circles in the fabric with your thumb. The grove feels different now. Not haunted, not sacred, just observed. Like something ancient is watching, not with menace, but with memory. You remember hearing once that Athena, after the Arachne affair, never wove again with quite the same joy. That she kept weaving, of course she was a goddess after all, and habits die slower than mortals. But her tapestries grew more structured, more abstract. Less story, more symmetry, as if she feared her own creations might start whispering too. And yet spiderweb started showing up in her temples, not woven by hand but carved in stone, etched in wood, painted behind altars, not grand, not obvious, just small enough that only the observant would notice. Some say it was an apology, others a threat. But maybe it was something else, a sign that even gods must remember. You rise slowly and tuck the cloth away. It isn't finished. Maybe it never will be. But it's yours, knots and all. You walk through the grove, careful not to disturb the web stretched between branches like sleepy chandeliers. The moon is rising now, catching on each strand, turning the whole place into a cathedral of silk and shadow. You think of the other spiders, the ones in your cellar, in your boots, in the corners of temples and scroll rooms, the ones who don't weave myths but catch flies, eat quietly, rebuild after every broom swipe. You wonder if they know they're sacred. Probably not. Maybe that's better. Maybe the best miracles are the ones that don't know they're being watched. You stop beneath a tree whose roots curl like fingers into the earth. A spider is there, small, brown, quiet. She's finishing a web, attaching the last strand with a careful tap of her leg. You watch her work. She never hesitates, never redoes a line, never wonders if the goddess watching approves. You whisper barely loud enough to break the hush. Good work. The spider doesn't answer, but she doesn't leave either. You sit down again, back against the tree, the earth cool and firm beneath you. Your legs stretch out, your eyes close. You think of threads, of how easily they break and how astonishing it is that they can hold anything at all. You drift not into sleep quite yet, but into the soft half space where dreams begin. The kind of place where stories spin themselves, where looms click softly in the distance, and where a spider once cursed spins silk, not in shame but in art. A tangle in your thread, a knot in your thoughts, and still the weaving goes on. The road coils downward like a lazy snake through scrubby brush and tired cypress trees, and your sandals kick up more dust than dignity with each step. The satchel still hangs from your shoulder, a bit heavier now, not from anything you've added, but from the quiet weight of curiosity you didn't pack. It swings against your hip in rhythm tapping like it's got something to say. You tap it back as if to say, not now. Inside that satchel, still nestled around the fig stem, is a spiral of silk so precise it could have been drawn with a compass. It wasn't there this morning. You'd checked. Twice. The fig itself had been the last of your rations, soft, overripe, sweet, in the way fruit only gets when it's about to give up. You hadn't planned on saving it. And yet when you reached inside, there it was. Not bitten, not eaten, just wrapped, like a gift or a warning. It's the kind of detail that would make a poet weep and a philosopher suspicious. You reach the next village by late afternoon. It's got that familiar scent of burning olive wood and distant goats, plus the universal sign of civilization, a child shrieking in the background, and a dog that won't stop barking at nothing. You pass the well first, where a few women are gathered wrapping flatbread in cloth and gossip in tighter circles. You nod, they nod. No one says much, which is how you know they've already decided what sort of person you are. You find an inn or something pretending to be one. A crooked structure with a roof that sags like it's had a long life and regrets most of it. The sign above the door is faded into illegibility, but the smell of chickpeas and old wine drifting from inside confirms that yes, this place serves food, sleep, and probably a few stories if you wait around long enough. The innkeeper doesn't blink when you ask for a room. He just hands you a brass key with a green ribbon tied to it, as if colour-coded hospitality were a thing. Your room turns out to be a little box in the back, no window, but a breeze finds its way in anyway through the ceiling probably, or the walls, or both. You settle in, place your satchel gently on the floor like it contains something sacred. Maybe it does. You sit on the edge of the cot. The straw mattress sighs beneath you like it's tired of pretending to be comfortable. You pull out the fig, still there, still wrapped in silk. The spiral's even tighter now, like the web is thinking or concentrating. You turn it slowly in your palm, careful not to break the threads. They shimmer a little, even in the dusty light of the oil lamp. You've heard of spider silk used to stitch wounds, to trap enemies, to line coffins in temples. But this feels like a message. And here's the strange thing, you're not scared. Not exactly. You should be, maybe. But you're not. Because whatever this is, this web, this fig, this myth that won't leave you alone, it's been gentle, intrusive, yes, but never cruel. You lie back, eyes tracing the cracks in the plaster ceiling, and you think about Arachne. Not the story they carved into temple stone, but the person, the girl, the one who dared to say out loud what others whispered, the one who spun truth into thread even when she knew it might snap. You wonder if she felt a moment of power just before the curse came, that single heartbeat where the room went still and everyone knew she was better, unquestionably, uncomfortably better. And what do you do with that kind of truth in a world ruled by gods? You punish it. You reshape it. You shrink it down to something eight-legged and silent and safe. The oil lamp flickers. You sit up, reach for your satchel again almost without thinking. This time you're not looking for figs or thread or old crumbs. You're checking for her. And sure enough, in the very bottom, nestled where the lining phrase, you see her. Tiny. Legs folded neatly beneath a glossy brown body. Not moving. Not hiding either. Just there. Present. You stare. She doesn't blink, spiders don't, but somehow you know she's aware of you. You whisper because it feels right. You followed me. She doesn't answer, but the web around the fig hums ever so slightly like it agrees. You should be overwhelmed. You should be rational, logical. You should pack up your things and walk to the nearest shrine and let a priest explain this away with incense and holy water and metaphors. But you don't. You sit back down. You place the satchel beside you, open like a guest chair. You let the silence stretch, and then you begin to speak. You tell her about your travels, how long it's been since you stayed in one place, how the roads have grown familiar but the villages blur, how you've seen temples crumble and shepherds recite poetry better than any bard, how once years ago you tried to weave but the thread always tangled, and so you gave up and told yourself it didn't matter. The spider doesn't move, but something changes in the air. A stillness you recognize now, the kind that comes just before a loom begins to sing. You tell her about your dreams, the strange ones, the ones filled with thread and moonlight and hands that become legs and shadows that dance across your ceiling and whisper of webs too delicate to survive daylight. You thought they were nonsense. Now you're not so sure. Outside, the wind picks up. The dog barks again, this time closer. But in your little room, everything is calm. You reach into the satchel one last time and gently lift the fig. You place it on the windowsill, or where a windowsill would be if this room had a window. You press your forehead to the cool wall and close your eyes. You don't expect answers. You don't want them, really. You just want to keep walking with the story, to carry it a little further down the road, maybe to another village, maybe to another dream. Because if Arachne is still watching, still weaving, still choosing travellers like you, then maybe the gods aren't the only ones with the power to shape how stories end. Maybe you can too, and maybe you don't have to finish the tapestry to know how it feels to create one. You lie down. The spider remains still. The fig glows softly in the dark, and a thread of silk stretches between what you thought you knew and what you now believe. You wake to the soft hush of wind brushing over olive leaves. The gentle warmth seeps through the cracks in the inn's crooked shutters, the kind of gold light that makes even the dust in the air look holy. For a moment, you don't move. You simply lie there, half listening to the creak of old wood, the cluck of a chicken wandering too close, and the faint rhythm of someone sweeping the stone courtyard below. It's not silence exactly, but it's the kind of morning quiet that asks you to respect it. Eventually your thoughts return to the satchel. You sit up, swing your legs over the side of the bed and pull it close. The fig, once sweet, once whole, is gone. In its place lies only silk, just the spiral now. No bite marks, no pieces, not even the stem. It's as if the fruit had been replaced, or maybe never existed in the first place. The thread is tighter today, tighter and more deliberate if thread can be deliberate. It shimmers faintly as though the silk itself is exhaling. You stare at it longer than you mean to, not because it's especially beautiful, though it is in a strange understated way, but because it feels aware, like something that was made for you, or maybe by you. A message, a mark, a whisper spun in silence. You wrap it carefully in a corner of cloth and slip it back into the satchel. Then you rise, stretch, and leave the inn without saying a word. The grove isn't far. You've been hearing about it since you were a child, Athena's grove, the olive trees planted by the goddess herself. No one ever said where it was exactly. It's just somewhere past the ridge or before the stream that sings. But the closer you get, the more certain you become that you're on the right path. The road narrows, the trees grow older, the air grows quieter, and then you see them. The olive trees. Not just a few scattered across a hillside, but an entire living cathedral of green and silver. Their trunks twist upward like dancers frozen in mid-turn, gnarled with age and thick with the weight of centuries. Each leaf glints in the light like a scale, 1,000 tiny shields rustling in slow applause. The scent is sharp and earthy, the kind of smell that gets into your bones and stays there. You walk among them with reverence you didn't plan on feeling. Each step is careful, each breath is deliberate. You don't want to speak. You don't want to break whatever spell is holding this place together. Eventually you find a stone, flat, round, warm from the sun. It invites you without words. You sit. You reach into your satchel and pull out the spool of thread you've been carrying. It's coarse stuff, unevenly spun, dyed with something that was once probably indigo but now hovers between blue and dust. A weaver's widow gave it to you 3 towns ago. She pressed it into your palm with a nod and a look that suggested she knew something you didn't. You unwind a little of it. Then you begin to weave, or at least you try. The thread resists, not in a dramatic way. It just doesn't behave. The knots slip loose. The pattern unravels. It catches on the edge of your nail snags in the grain of the stone twists when it should lie flat. You try again and again. Always the same result. Always the same section. The same 6 inches of thread. It tangles, folds, loops in on itself like a child throwing a tantrum. You frown, smooth it out, try a different angle, a different stitch. Still it fights you. The harder you push, the worse it becomes. Eventually you stop. You lay the thread across your knees and stare at it like it's a riddle, and then you laugh. Just once, quietly, because you've seen this before. You remember Arachne's tapestry, or rather what it might have looked like. No one preserved it. No temple kept it safe. No artist copied it. But stories survive. You've heard enough of them by now to know the basics. A tapestry so beautiful, so honest, that even Athena couldn't deny its power. What if this thread remembers that story? What if it's not failing but refusing? What if it's trying to protect you? You lean closer to the knot. It's not just a mess. It's intricate. Almost purposeful. You could swear it forms a pattern. A symbol, maybe. Or a letter from a language no one remembers how to read. The kind of thing that might only appear at the corner of your vision just before you blink. You press your fingertip to it, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel it press back. A tiny pulse, a barely there tug. The wind picks up. The olive leaves shimmer like laughter. You look up and then down again. The knot hasn't moved, but the world around you feels slightly rearranged. You smile, not because you understand, but because you're beginning to realize you don't have to. Some stories aren't meant to be unraveled. Some are meant to be carried. You pack the thread away, not finished, not discarded, just paused. The same way you'd pause a song you love too much to finish just yet. As you rise to leave, the wind shifts again. It brings with it the faintest scent of figs and silk. You don't look back. You don't need to. Whatever thread tied Arachne's fate to yours has already been spun. And it's still spinning. Somewhere in the shadows of these ancient trees there's a web that glows in moonlight. You haven't seen it yet, but you will, eventually. You walk through another stretch of sun-bleached road where the trees start to look less like guardians and more like onlookers standing tall still and quietly judging your slow sandaled pace. There's a rhythm to your steps now. Not quite purposeful, but not aimless either. You're not chasing anything. You're just following the thread. Not literally, of course. It's safely tucked away in your satchel, still coiled like a secret you're not quite ready to unravel. But it tugs at your thoughts gently like a memory waiting to be remembered. The wind picks up a little, not enough to chill. Just enough to make the leaves whisper things you can't quite hear. You pass by a hillside olive grove, the trees leaning like they're trading gossip. The kind that has aged for centuries and still gets retold whenever someone new walks by. Eventually the path spits you out onto the edge of a tiny town. Or maybe it's a market village. It's hard to tell. There are no signs. Just a cluster of dusty buildings that look like they've never been new. They sag with the weight of time, patched with clay and paint and the occasional splash of stubborn colour. A blue shutter here, a red awning there. Everything smells faintly of thyme and goat. You breathe in. It's not unpleasant, just honest. The market is already in motion. Chickens dart between carts. Someone's yelling about figs. A child with a basket full of lemons bumps into you, mutters something that might be sorry or move and disappears into the crowd like a yellow blur. You pause. Adjust your satchel. The silk thread inside feels oddly heavier now. Or maybe you're just more aware of it. Like it's grown a personality while you weren't looking. You wander between stalls, not really shopping. More like inspecting. Not the goods, the people. Their hands, their movements, the way they touch the fabric or turn over a pear to check for bruises. You're looking for something. You just don't know what yet. Then near the edge of the market, just beside a crumbling wall covered in lichen and lazy vines, you see her. She sits on a low stool barely more than a plank nailed to a stump surrounded by baskets. dried figs, walnuts, some oddly shaped gourds that look more like props than food. But she's not selling, she's spinning. A drop spindle, the kind you've seen in illustrations or museum displays, wooden worn, perfectly balanced. Her fingers move with a kind of muscle memory that doesn't question its purpose. Twist, pull, let it drop, wind, repeat. You're not close enough to see her face clearly, but there's something about her. The posture, maybe, or the way the crowd parts just slightly around her, like she's always been there and will always be there, and the world has simply learned to accommodate. You approach. She doesn't look up, not right away, just keep spinning. You stop in front of her and clear your throat, not because you need to, but because you don't know how else to begin. Nice spindle, you say, because your brain forgets how to start conversations with people who might be mythological in disguise. She glances up. Her eyes are grey, not the dramatic storm cloud kind, more like stone, worn smooth and unmoved by weather. Silk, she asks, tilting her head slightly toward your satchel. You blink, sort of. Spiral. You hesitate, then nod. Her mouth quirks. Not quite a smile. Not quite not. Of course it is. You sit on the low wall beside her. The sun bakes the stone through your tunic and it feels good on your back. Familiar. Like warmth remembered rather than newly given. Thread first, she says. Story after. You don't argue. You watch her hands. They remind you of the loom, of Arachne, of Athena, of the way gods and mortals both treat thread like it's something disposable until it isn't. Until it's tangled or cut or changed into a curse. What are you spinning, you ask? She shrugs. Grey. You nod like that answers anything. The market continues around you, but the noise fades. Or maybe your attention just narrows. Her spindle turns like a clock with no hands. No destination. Just motion. The kind of steady repetition that makes a soul feel held. You ever hear the story of the boy who tried to stitch his dreams, she asks suddenly. You look at her. No, he kept having the same one. Every night. A field of stars falling into his hands. So he took thread, real thread, and tried to sew it into his blanket. Thought maybe if he could trap the dream he'd stop forgetting it when he woke. Did it work? She snorts softly. He stitched right through the blanket, the sheet, and his own thigh. You wince. But he never had the dream again, she finishes. So maybe it did. You chuckle. That's awful. It's mythology. She pulls the spindle up and lets it fall again. You watch the fibres tighten into a line that didn't exist moments ago. Most of the stories worth remembering start with someone trying something stupid. You look down at your satchel. You can feel the silk spiral without touching it. Like it's pulsing, or whispering, or just waiting. She sees you staring. You don't have to open it. I wasn't going to. Liar, she says gently. You smile because she's not wrong. She unwinds a small skein from the spindle and hands it to you. The thread is rough, uneven grey as twilight. You expect it to feel scratchy. It doesn't. It feels useful. Take it, she says. In case your spiral needs a friend. You tuck it beside the silk. Is this yours, you ask? This market. This town. She shakes her head. I just sit. And she does. The way trees just grow. The way myths just wait. The sun is lower now. Someone is shouting about chickens. A bell rings far off in the hills. The day is moving on. You stand. She nods. Where are you headed, she asks. You shrug. Wherever the thread goes. She finally smiles. It's tiny. Crooked. Like a story she's heard before and never stopped liking. Try not to pull it too fast, she says. It's not the kind of web you want to rush through. You walk away. The satchel at your side swings with your steps. The thread inside doesn't move, but you feel it now. Not like a weight, not like a burden, like a possibility. You pass out of the market through a field of bees and weeds and low-humming fences. You spot a web between two branches glinting with the last light of the afternoon. It's perfect, centered, spiraled like a question mark that never expects an answer. And you whisper, "Thank you," not sure if you mean the weaver or Arachne or Athena. But the web doesn't need specifics. It just keeps catching light. The road narrows again, not dramatically, just in that slow creeping way old paths do when no one's walked them in a while. Shrubs lean in like nosy neighbours, brushing your legs with leaves the colour of forgotten coins. They seem to whisper secrets you're not supposed to hear, half warnings, half lullabies. You duck beneath a bent fig tree whose branches arc like arms stretched from sleep, and step into a place that doesn't quite feel mapped to any direction. North-south, irrelevant. You're no longer trying to go somewhere, you're letting somewhere happen to you. Your satchel swings lightly at your side. It's not empty, but it no longer tugs like it once did, as if the weight it carried has shifted, not gone, just resting. Inside the thread waits, still coiled, still quiet, still potent with a kind of magic that doesn't sparkle but hums low like breath beneath a blanket. By late afternoon you reach a grove. It doesn't appear suddenly. It sort of unveils itself tree by tree like a curtain parting shyly at a puppet show no one remembered buying tickets for. Olive trees mostly, but not the neat ones you'd find in rows behind some stone farmhouse. No, these twist and lean and sprawl like dancers frozen mid-spin, each one shaped by memory more than sunlight. Some bend so low they practically bow to you. Others rear upward, defiant, gnarled into sculptures of silent strength. And there, right in the centre, like it's been waiting for you since the beginning of time, is the loom. It's simple, nothing glowing, nothing divine. Just wood dark, with age pale in places where hands have touched it over centuries. The warp threads are strung, but paused, stretched, taut, like questions unanswered. A shuttle rests beside them, its yarn trailing like an ellipsis in a forgotten sentence. You don't speak. You don't ask if it's okay. You just sit. The ground is surprisingly soft. Moss, maybe. Or the kind of grass that grows in places too sacred for sandals. You take the thread from your bag slowly, like it might vanish if you move too fast. Your fingers hover for a moment over the loom. Then deliberately you tie one end of the thread to the shuttle. It's not ceremony, it's instinct. You pull it through the weft. It catches. Barely. You try again. This time it tangles. Again, it frays. Not much. Just a soft sigh of fibres parting ways, but it's enough. You pause, breathing shallow, as if the loom might scold you for not understanding its rhythm. Then above you a glint. High in the branches of the oldest tree a spider's web spans from limb to limb. You hadn't seen it before, but now the light catches it just right, turning silk into silver, a perfect spiral, suspended like breath, or prophecy, or warning. You lean back, stare up at the web, and suddenly it doesn't feel like an accident that you're here. Not after all this. Not after everything Arachne endured. The loom isn't rejecting your thread. It's giving you time. Or maybe it's reminding you not all stories have to end today. Historians still argue whether ancient Greeks feared spiders or saw them as sacred. Some claim temples included secret nooks to house them, believing each silk thread was a whisper from the gods. Others say priests used bundles of thyme and rosemary to sweep away webs, citing impurity, danger, shadowy omens. No consensus ever emerged, and perhaps none ever will. But you don't need certainty. You have the thread. You don't break it. You just leave it tied, dangling like a sentence half spoken. A story paused, not abandoned. And you walk away from the loom with the strange sense that someone else will return. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe centuries from now. Maybe you in a different body in a different life, following the same path once again. The olive trees rustle gently as if agreeing. as if blessing your unfinished work. Later, much later, you find yourself by a fire, not yours. You never saw the spark that started it, but it welcomes you anyway. A group of travellers you don't ask their names sits in a quiet ring. One hands you a fig still warm from the sun. Another offers a clay cup of watered wine. No questions, no expectations. As the flames flicker low, someone begins a story about a girl, a weaver, a goddess, a tapestry, a truth so sharp it made the gods flinch, and then the first spider. You say nothing, just listen. And as the storyteller's voice softens, winding like silk around the firelight, you feel something shift in the night air. Not cold, not fear, just presence. Like someone is watching, not from malice, from memory. And when you glance to the edges of the fire, you swear for a moment the shadows shimmer with threads. You've seen the web, you've touched the thread, you know this story. And somewhere, maybe perched in a corner beam of Olympus, may be woven into the fibres of your very cloak, Athena watches too. Not angry, not even regretful, just still. A goddess who made a choice. And maybe, if you're not mistaken, one who now smiles. A small, quiet smile. The kind that says, that'll do just fine.